Yeah, first and foremost, we don't fear America. Must be clear. We don't fear what America does. One. Number two, in this entire episode, they've lost our trust. Okay? They've lost our trust. Rebuilding this trust is not going to be easy. No one in the Indian establishment is going to trust America. Even before this, we never had great trust in America.
Welcome to The Focus. I'm John Bruni. Today we're speaking with Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, retired former Director General of Artillery at the Indian Army. Many of you will know Ravi from his insightful analyses on his The Gunner's Shot YouTube channel. He now serves as a Professor of Practice in the Department of Aerospace Engineering at IIT in Madras. The General has had a distinguished military career and continues to shape debates on India's strategic outlook. In this episode, we'll cover a range of pressing issues: India's military preparedness, the evolving Himalayan standoff with China, the ever-shifting threat from Pakistan, and the big-picture strategic challenges India faces in the decade ahead. General Shankar, welcome to The Focus.
Thanks a lot, Dr. John Bruni, for calling me onto the focus. It's indeed an honor for me to be here. And
Thank
you
you, sir.
laid out an exciting vista of topics. So let's shoot.
Okay, all right. Spoken like a true gentleman from the artillery, I will have to say.
Yeah.
All right, sir, let's get started with Operation Sindoor. What is your take on this operation, and what did it tell us about the Indian Army's evolving doctrine and preparedness?
Look, if Operation Sindoor told anything to India, it is that the evolving operational setting for us is going to be difficult. We're going to have here till now we were going to face a threat from China and Pakistan simultaneously, but hereafter it's going to be together. And we consider that the China and the threat from Pakistan is no more apart, it is one and the same. It is seamless as far as we are concerned. That's the first thing. The second thing is all our thinking about how to go about carrying out our operations have been validated in Op Sindoor. Many there are many opinions about this internationally. There's a lot of information that Pakistan has won the war and given us a bloody nose and things like that. That's the farthest from the truth. To put it in a cricketing analogy, if I say, if we won the match with just 4 wickets down, it doesn't mean we've lost the match. We still won the match, they're just 4 wickets down. And in a match, you lose wickets. That's part of the game. But what we gave across to Pakistan was, we told them that nothing in Pakistan is not reachable. Mutatis mutandis, we also gave a message to China because a lot of equipment used by Pakistan were of Chinese origin, and we defeated the Chinese equipment. We came out confident that we can handle the same Chinese equipment across the Himalayas. And actually, the tone of the Chinese has changed post-Op Sindoor. The tone of many other people have changed post-Op Sindoor. That's a different story. But our immediate adversaries or likely adversaries, Pakistan and China, their tone has changed, though they remain belligerent in the media.
Hmm. General, if I may ask, the sight of Prime Minister Modi being in Beijing and being next to Xi Jinping, how did that make you feel in terms of India's overall positioning? Do you think, the Modi government is doing the right thing now by trying to hedge against the Americans in a significant way and then moving into the enemy camp? I mean, does this complicate India's position? Because India's position is complicated. I mean, you just made the claim that India views China and Pakistan as a single threat. But then there are also other things that you have to watch. You've got to watch the stability of Sri Lanka. You're going to have to watch the stability of your neighbor Nepal. There are many things that India has to keep an eye on. Um, but from a big picture strategic position, how does that idea of Modi going in, shaking hands, or being seen to be close to Xi Jinping, how does that how is that viewed by yourself?
Yeah, look, let's be very, one has to be clear.
Mm,
The position in which India is, it's not complicated from an Indian point of view.
okay.
It's natural. For others, it might sound complicated. I
Mm,
just made the statement that Pakistan and China are seamless as far as we are concerned. That's the way we started looking at it. But there's also the fact that America, which was supposed to be a strategic ally, is now behind Pakistan. So it
mm,
actually complicates the thing. You have to look at it from different angles. We'll talk of Pakistan, we'll talk of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal later. So let me tackle the Chinese issue first. China and India have a common border of 3,000 odd kilometers. And whatever we've had a problem with them is not new. This is historic. It's there ever since, 1949. Why I say 1949? That's when PRC came into being,
yeah.
right? It's not new. It's ebbed and flowed. But ever since 2020, all equations along the LAC have changed for us and for China. Uh, and we have a relationship with them, and which we have to sort out between the two of us. America doesn't come in, Pakistan doesn't come in. And initially, things were looking different from many different points of view. But eventually, the Chinese have started realizing that they have to deal with us. And there's no other way but to deal with us. That's the first point. They tried to muzzle their way in 2020 till they hit a brick wall. I have to take you back into in 2020 for you to understand what I'm talking. Because they made their way into Galwan. We
Mm,
stopped them. We did the counter move on a place called the Kailash Ranges, which actually stymied the Chinese. They didn't know where to go after that. It was only after that that they started talking peace with us. Then they started talking, and for the first time in 2020, the Chinese went back 9 kilometers from where they had come and occupied our territory after breaking down their own bunkers which they had made in our territory. Not many people caught on to this, and this has not happened historically with China taking a step back ever. So they went back. After 4 years, in the intervening period between 2020 to 24, a few things happen, which you have to view it in that continuum to understand how we deal with China. The Chinese economy has started tapering off, and our economy has started going up. It's not the mass of the economy, it's the momentum of the economy. Mass-wise, they're huge. We know, understand that. Our momentum is high, their momentum has gone down, and remarkably so. Militarily, we become strong. Our infrastructure has gone up. The differential in the infrastructure along the Himalayas between China and India was quite a bit prior to 2020. No more, right? They suddenly realized that there was no way they can come across the Himalayas. In fact, we started rebalancing. With the rebalancing of our forces in the Himalayas, I'm not giving you my operational details. I'm telling you what the Chinese have started perceiving with their writings. If you read their writings in Mandarin, you come to know that they have started going defensive out there.
mm,
Till then, till 2020, I never saw a Chinese writing which said be defensive against India. But off late, I see them talking of defense lines and things like that. Right. So they have realized that a military confrontation with India is not only not winnable, is also losable. And that to the Communist Party is a risk, in my assessment, which is not acceptable. In fact, the Communist Party dictum is to avoid war at all costs. And this dictum started from the times of Deng Xiaoping, but they will always threaten war and coerce people into doing what they want others to do militarily. But if it comes push to the shove, they will not fight. And you have to understand this. And hence, that trajectory of relationship between India and China has been continuing. We've been talking to them. And last year at Kazan, when the Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping met, it was decided that they'll go back another 15 kilometers at another different point, which is one of the last points of friction. So we have an equation. We know how to handle the Chinese. And twice in the past 4 years, they have gone back 15 kilometers and 9 kilometers. So you forget about what others perceive, we know how to handle them. So this process of going and meeting uh, President Xi Jinping at the SCO meet, right, was actually in the offing for quite some time. It's not new. We have our own relationship which we have to sort out. We have to sort out the border between the two of us. They also know that they can do no headway, and right. And they also know over a period of time that they're weakening. They're militarily weakening because if you see the number of military generals who've been sacked by Xi Jinping, if in the Australian army, if so many generals, I wouldn't say so many generals, even if 3 generals were sacked in the Australian army, I don't think Australian army can fight a war. Say if I'm wrong.
No, no, you're not wrong, but I can tell you right now, our army's so small. We're talking
No,
about giant countries. I mean, we're talking about China, we're talking about
no,
India, but yes,
no.
your point is taken. Your point's
The
taken.
point is, no country can have military leadership after 30 to 40 generals have been sacked.
Yeah.
And if there's no military leadership, the military can't fight. One. And number two, their equipment has been found out during Op Sindoor. That's why I came back to Op Sindoor. Right? It's the same HQ-9, it's the same whatever S-300, it's the same things which are there, eh, which are deployed on their own area. Can they fight? That's the own question mark, which I'm sure they're thinking inside. You can, I mean, the Western press, let me, well, the Western press has a way of making a lot about the Chinese army. We know the reality. We handle reality because none of you face China across 3,200 kilometers like we do. So we know how to handle them. Believe you me, we know how to handle them. Yes, they're a bigger army. We know that. But across the Himalayas, we are on par. So we have that confidence. We know how to handle them. So everything stems from the military confidence a lot, plus our economic heft, which is growing. So our Prime Minister meeting Mr. Xi Jinping is an extension of that natural process between India and China, irrespective of USA or the West. That's the first thing. The
Mm.
second thing is, look, USA was supposed to be our strategic partner. It flipped, right? It flipped. And it started virtually, threatening us with tariffs. It's not threatened, it's put 50% tariffs and
Mhm.
all that, just on the verge of a trade deal for many other reasons, including, India not endorsing a Nobel Prize for Mr. Trump and other things. So if they don't respect us, we don't respect them. As simple as that. Give respect, take respect. India is not a small country, and India has options. We know how to deal with China, so we'll deal with them. We know how to deal with USA, we'll deal with them. So that's how it is. I think in this whole story, what has happened is we've got the confidence of being the fourth power in the world. People don't talk of it today. It's a matter of time. That's what has actually happened. Willy-nilly, India has been projected into a global stage as a fourth power, and people have to talk of it hereafter. And it is acting in its own interest and not in the interest of anyone else. It is not interested in being in any camp. It is not interested in any alignment. It is
Yes.
not, yeah,
Sir, I have to raise this question,
yeah,
and that
please.
is, India still is a member of the Quad. I mean, I admit to everything that you say from an Indian perspective is 100%. But, you know, can India navigate its way with its strategically autonomous position into a situation where it's friendly toward Russia and kind of ambiguously friendly toward China on the one side, and then be sort of ambiguously friendly or balancing off against the United States and Japan and Australia on the other. Whereas, from an American perspective, the Americans like the idea of control. They are the number one global hegemon, and whatever they want, they get, right? And so, of course, Australia plays that game to a degree, Japan plays that game as well. India doesn't play that game. Does that make us bad partners in a sense, almost like stillborn partners, because you can't even sit around the table and talk when there's an active war going on one side of the world where Russia is still considered a partner of India and a relatively important partner of India. From a Western perspective or an American perspective, that would always sit at odds. And now with the Trump administration, my goodness, we're seeing some very fundamental changes in the international environment. So how does one address that? I mean, if you were a policymaker in New Delhi right now, what would your priority areas be in trying to make sure that India maintains itself?
Look, at the outset, India and USA had a great strategic partnership.
Mm,
It had a great strategic partnership, and I firmly believe that this was the partnership of the century. And in fact, my thoughts were very well echoed by Mr. Kurt Campbell and uh, I'm forgetting the other person who wrote in the Foreign Affairs that there's an alliance required between India and USA.
mm,
And these were my thoughts. And yeah, Jake Sullivan, who was the previous NSA.
yeah,
It was a uh, these were my thoughts probably 3 months, 4 months back. That would have been the ideal thing. But the way the Trump administration has behaved towards India, right? Uh, and the stance it has taken has told us that this partnership is no more. There's no strategic partnership with USA. We have a relationship with USA. Our relationship is neither strategic nor it's a partnership. It's a relationship. We don't know whether we can rely on USA. Even before, you go back historically, we could never rely on USA. If in the 71 war with Pakistan, we were on the opposite sides. So we had no trust. And that lack of trust has just been thrust on us at this point of time, especially considering it, because everything comes down to the business of oil, that we are taking Russian oil and we are supporting Russia in its wartime. The
right.
fact is, the price caps were put down by whom? By the West and USA. And who encouraged us to buy oil from Russia? The Biden administration. I'm not bothered whether it's the Biden administration or the Trump administration. The US government. We deal with governments. And that government, the US government said, yeah, please buy so that you can take oil and you give oil, refine and give it to others. At that price cap, we buying it below the price cap. And that oil, which surplus oil, which is given out, is given to whom? To USA, Europe, and Ukraine. These are the people who buy it from us, largely. And suddenly here comes Mr. Trump and says, stop taking oil from Russia. The fact is that we have 1.5 billion people whom we have to sustain. And we are 80% dependent, 80% dependent on outside energy. Where do we go overnight? Right? We buy from the market. Right? 1.5 billion people won't go by Trump's dictates. We'll go by our dictates. That's the dictate of the people. So we have to buy oil where it is cheapest for us. It's a matter of great economic consequence for us, right? They never gave us an alternative without giving an alternative. And why should I buy American oil at twice the price? If they
Mhm.
give me the oil at half the price, I might start thinking. Right?
Mhm.
One. And the second thing is we have a huge relationship with Russia. And that relationship goes back over half a century or more. They always stood by us. They never let us down. So why should we let them down? It's pro quid quo. Here we have a partnership which has let us down completely, not bothered. And they start talking ill of us, demeaning us in their tweets and social media and all that. We have not spoken so far against them. And overnight, you go and say that Pakistan is your best friend. You get that dictator to go and have lunch with you. And he's not even a head of state. He's just the chief of army staff. He's taken to the White House and given a lunch, and overnight you start having Pakistan as your best friend. So how do you think India should react? We have no we have no doubt in my mind as to how we have to react. If Trump and USA are free agents, so is India.
Mhm.
We are not dependent on USA for anything.
There
We can
is
be
there
independent.
there is another very practical element to all of this,
Yeah.
and that is the Russia-Ukraine war itself. Now, with the Ukrainians having their own long-range strike capability and looking at the way the Ukrainians are actually fighting the war, they are actually hitting the Russian oil and gas facilities, which must be then having some form of effect, not just within domestic Russia, but also on domestic Russia's capacity to export to countries like India. So how does how does this turn in the war affect India in spite of what Trump does? So there are two things you're watching here. Firstly, Trump and his threat of secondary sanctions on countries like India that deal in Russian oil. But you're also looking at a new situation on the ground. Well, not so new, it's been happening for quite some time, but the Ukrainians countering the Russians by hitting the Russians where it hurts in their oil refinery capabilities.
Well, as far as secondary sanctions are there, they're already there. So there's nothing left. The
Mm,
threat is gone. You see, a threat is good if it is implied. If it is applied, there's no more threat. So the threat from USA, whatever secondary sanctions are out.
mm.
Well, let's not. Uh, right. As far as Ukraine, Russia goes, like they let them sort it out between the two of them. Okay, and if Ukraine hits Russian refineries, and if we have to get oil from somewhere, we'll source it. It's an open market. We'll buy. It's not a US controlled market, isn't it? We can buy from Venezuela, we can buy from Saudis, we can buy from Nigeria. This
Yeah,
is not the
no.
only look. This is not a US. This is not the world is not controlled by USA,
Donald Trump would
right?
actually disagree with you, but yes, I
That's
I
okay.
understand.
Okay. He's not the emperor of the world either. I couldn't care a damn about him.
Have you seen
I'm
what
being
he's
very
done to the
very
White
clear.
House?
I He can do what he wants to USA, and the people of USA have selected him. All the best to him. But he doesn't have a say in India. I don't vote for him. He doesn't control me. I vote for Mr. Modi, and Mr. Modi is answerable to me as a voter. We are a free democracy, right?
Mm.
And Mr. Modi has to stand by the people who have voted him into power. And they have voted him into power to not to rule over them, but to serve them. In our democracy, that's the way things go. Right? He has to cater for the basic needs of every Indian. And he's doing that.
General, do you think that there's a chance that if this was a temporary upset in America Indian relations, that it's all only just about Trump. And say Trump doesn't exist at the next election, and we've got a more friendly, more open-minded president coming through who wants to reset its relations with India. Do you think that India would be happy with that, or would India come to the negotiating table fearing that America it showed that it was very flippant with the way that it viewed India and treated India at one stage? Can they be trusted with forging a reset which will last to the benefit of both countries?
Yeah, first and foremost, we don't fear America. Must be clear. We don't fear what America does. One. Number two, in this entire episode, they've lost our trust. Okay? They've lost our trust. Rebuilding this trust is not going to be easy. No one in the Indian establishment is going to trust America. Even before this, we never had great trust in America. In fact, the trust in America prior to 2000 was not very good at all. Look, you must remember, they were against us in a war with Pakistan. They sided Pakistan for everything, right? We've been under American sanctions for many years. And so there's no trust in America. They threatened us with sanctions even as a partner with CATSA when we went in for the S-400 from Russia. And now they put us under sanctions. If this is the kind of partnership, there's no trust left. One day you're a partner, and next day you're under sanctions. So how do you think we're going to trust? And is there consistency in US policy? One day you go ahead, buy oil from Russia, and the next day you say, no, you are under 50% sanctions because you stop buying without taking into consideration the effect on so many people. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of our people. So if that consideration is not there in USA, it's gone. Right? And as we speak, I keep seeing, rants from the minions of Mr. Trump in the social media against India and Indians. Every minute, even as we speak, America is eroding whatever trust is left or not left between India and USA.
Where does that leave the Quad then?
Look, the Quad is uh, on the rocks. I'll be very honest.
Right,
I
right.
mean, I'm not giving you my official position, I'm giving my own position.
Hmm.
Quad is on the rocks. Notwithstanding the fact that our troops are at this point of time in Alaska training with USA.
Hmm.
The naval exercises are going to go on. We are keeping up our end of the bargain. We'll go ahead with it for some more time because we feel we were committed completely with the Quad. We were completely committed to the Quad, right? And we'll go ahead, we'll see how America behaves, and then we'll take a call. Of course, the indications are that there's some kind of a reset in the horizon, some ice breaking between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi happening as we speak, and that's why the exercises between India and USA have gone ahead, right? And there is hope that the Quad will, uh, revive itself. But if you ask what do you do with the Quad? I think Japan and Australia have to come in. If the Quad has to go on, and the two biggest entities in the Quad, right, military entities in the Quad, are having issues, it's in Japan's interest and Australia's interest to get the Quad going and keep the Quad going. And you have to step in and talk and tell, talk some sense into America how to behave.
Sir, I wish I shared your optimism for such a situation, but unfortunately, Japan and Australia, as I mentioned earlier, we all subscribe to a higher power, and that higher power is the United States. So the likelihood of us being able to, I mean, it's not that Australia in particular wouldn't be able to try to use a back channel to the Trump administration to try to smooth things over. It's whether or not the Trump administration would listen to Australia.
Yeah,
And I think that that's always been a problem for Australian diplomacy going as far back as the war on terrorism. I mean, there were many instances where the Australian government had problems with how the Bush administration was moving forward, and they did air those problems. But, the bigger party always gets what it wants. And I think that in that case, Japan and Australia's capacity to lean on the United States would be particularly limiting. Yeah.
yeah, I go with you completely. I understand that point of view, but that's where the court is. I mean, look, into it personally, I do feel that the court is of great consequence in containing China. I mean, it's only the court which can do it. No one else can. But USA has spun out a situation which is there as it is. And there's yet another layer, which I might say. There's a sneaking feeling in India that USA and China might get into a G2 kind of a situation.
I'm glad you said that. I suspect for all the bluster that is happening on the other side of the Pacific, there is always it's almost like an outlier possibility, but it's something that we can't dismiss because, of course, the things that tie the United States and China together is economics. And as we
Yes.
know, economics is a powerful motivating force, and it would be interesting to see whether or not this is the very scenario that's going to be pushed onto us over the next few months as things start getting a bit twitchy in China. Perhaps there will be an entente between China and the United States, and that will then bring its own set of strategic complications to countries like India and even Australia.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Hmm.
And all these are there, and you'll view it in this kind of a scenario. It doesn't odd that we start talking to China, right? So we have to, I mean, we have no choice but to talk to China, not as friends, but we have our own problems which we have to resolve. There are a lot of
Hmm.
other issues. The people going across, visas, this, that, all that. And it is not as if it is just not the issue of Quad, Australia, India, and USA. There's the issue of Dalai Lama. They're building a dam across.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many other
Yeah.
issues, and we have to sort that out. So, there are many other purely bilateral issues between India and China which we have to resolve. So we'll do that. I mean, right? And then we also have to see how to handle, or maintain a relationship with Russia, given that Russia has a very great relationship with China.
That's also a
That,
complicating relationship, though, sir,
yes,
isn't it?
yes,
Yes.
yes. That's a very complicating relationship. That's a triangle which very few people, understand in the West. As
Yeah.
much as Russia needs China, Russia needs India to get China off its back.
Hmm.
Even Russia is balancing between India and China. And, while Russia is handling China the way it has to, that's a different story. If tomorrow things don't go very well between Russia and China, it will use India. And we also use Russia to pressurize China to get messages across. So we have to do that. Right. Ideal for all of us would be that USA and Russia solve their problems. And then, we can have a good relationship with Russia, we can have a good relationship with USA, and we do what we have to do with China. But unfortunately, that has been virtually destroyed because, I mean, the way I read the Ukraine war and the Russia-Ukraine war, you go into it, a lot of as much as people say that it is Russia who's invaded Ukraine, that invasion was virtually an invitation to come and invade from the West. You go back to the 90s, the Minsk one, Minsk two, and eastward expansion of NATO. You go to that history. There's an alternate reality which the West doesn't portray, and where the people in the West have not spoken to Russia. If have people in the West spoken to Russia to finish the war in a you know with an open mind, or not start a war with open mind, you have to go back.
You're right, and yet I also come from the perspective that I don't buy the NATO expansion argument because ultimately, if you looked at the former Warsaw Pact countries, they looked towards Russia, and Russia always appeared to be that stock standard militarized bear that hovered over them. Now, I know we can go back into history and say, well, had the Minsk agreements been worked out better, you could go that back even further to 1994 and say, well, Russia was a signatory to the Budapest Memorandum, and so therefore it guaranteed the sovereignty and the integrity of Ukraine. And yet, where are we now?
Yeah,
And I mean, this is also another, two things can be right at the same time, which adds to the complicating aspect of what we're talking about. But I would also argue that in terms of the way the West had treated Russia immediately after the fall of the Soviet Union was probably not the best way of ensuring that Russia would not go down that sort of more belligerent path. But then, again,
yeah,
historical counterfactuals,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you
So,
know,
yeah, I look that like I said, you see,
uh,
India never had a hand in that war.
yeah,
We're not the ones who started the war. We can't finish it. That's an issue between USA, West, Ukraine, and Russia, and to a large extent, even China. So we are not involved in that war in any way. So
yeah,
to and and we never helped Russia also in this war. We never helped. In fact, today, if you look at it, as recently as during the SCO summit, and even after that, Mr. Modi has been approached both by Mr. Zelensky and Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen to speak to Mr. Putin to see how to finish, get come to a closure on this war. Why? Why are they speaking to us? They're speaking to us to use our good offices because
yeah.
your own good offices there on the other side of either side of the Atlantic are failing, right?
I don't
So
disagree there.
now the point is that would you like India as a friend to finish this war,
Mm.
or would you like it as a threat or an enemy and say, look, you are helping Russia? Arm twisting India, those days are over. That's out. No one, that's out of the equation.
Do you think, General? Do you think? And I mean, this is just something that I've thought of, and that is, do you think that there is a Cold War mentality that the Americans haven't quite gotten over? That they see the world in this black and white struggle, and that you're either with us or against us, to use the old George W. Bush term. And if you're against us, then you're an enemy. There is no gray area. But of course, that's also not reality. In reality, life is a gray area, and we
Yeah.
all have to try to navigate that gray area the best way we can,
Yes.
right? And so I think that there is a simplistic notion in the White House now that somehow we can strong arm countries like India, as big as they are, as important as they are, that they eventually will crumble to our weight because we've got the power and you don't. I mean, it's a simplistic, almost childlike idea. But again, how far have we grown from the collapse of the Cold War? I don't think very far at all, actually.
Yeah, I go with you completely that Cold War thinking has not gone out of the equation.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I think, without getting into that part of the story, the fact is America has to look within itself of its dealings with India. And by now, it couldn't strong arm India when it was poor and weak 50 years back. It couldn't strong arm even India when as it was growing. It couldn't do anything when we, went through our nuclear tests and all that. It couldn't do. And what can it do now? Very little. And I want to put a piece of history into perspective. You look at the top five economies of this world today, right? USA, Germany, Japan, India, and of course China, right? These are the five top economies of this world, the largest economies. Leave USA out of the equation. You look at Japan, look at Germany and China. All three. are economies which have grown to this level through the aid given by USA. They were aided economies, right? And ever since the Second World War, Germany and Japan have had a peace dividend over 7 decades now. China has had a peace dividend from 79. They've not got into a war, right? And they're not opposed economies, they're aided economies. And hence they're there where they are. All the best to them. Look at India. We were a poor nation. We've had to fight 6 to 7 wars, the last war being of Sindoor, right? It's a modern war, it's a different war. You might call it a skirmish, it's a war all the same. We've fought wars. We have not stopped fighting a war ever since our independence. We've been under sanctions, not only by the West, by everyone. We were an opposed economy, and yet we have grown to number four or number five, whichever you want to talk, or whatever you want to say. We've grown despite everything. And if someone thinks that Mr. Trump's few sanctions and strong arm twisting will stop Indian growth, then he's thinking the wrong direction, right? And yet another thing I'd like to put across. You take the top 10 economies. Which economy is growing today, right? You see the Chinese economy. Just today morning, I did a podcast on Ganashot. You can have a look at it on how it's deflating. The August things are bad. Their economy is not going to revive. This is my prediction. They're not going to revive because the population is disappearing. It's disappearing at the fastest rate in human history. If you go into the demography, right? Where there's no population, where's the economy? Economy won't be built out of robots. It has to be economies of people. So that's China for you. Look at USA with its huge debt. It's a big economy, but it's an economy which can go any way. There's a huge risk. It'll shake the whole world. You look at the other strong economies. Look at Germany. You look at UK. You look at France. You see the economic mess these three big economies of Europe are in. You look at the problems with the Japanese economy is facing today. I've given you the big economies of this world. And where are they looking? Where is each economy looking at? It is looking at India. And it is looking at all economies are looking at India because we have the market, we have the people, our economy is chugging along at 7.8%. We never thought our economy is growing at 7.8% till the results came out last quarter. And we were thinking it will go at 7. This is how our economy is going. We can't be arm twisted by anyone because we are not an exporting economy. We are a consuming economy. We consume our own produce. If someone doesn't want our exports, we'll continue. Okay, we'll not grow at 7, 8, we'll grow at 5, but we'll still continue to grow. I mean, this is something which I didn't know. This is a Chinese demographer by his name, E. Fuxian. He wrote, he says USA can arm twist Japan, Germany, and China, and other economies, but it can't arm twist India because India is a consuming economy as opposed to those who are exporting economies and they depend on the American consumer market. I'm talking of geoeconomics and macroeconomics. So we have a strong military. It might not be the biggest military, it might not be the most modern military, but it has not lost a war so far. Except 1962, where we lost a war with China, we have given them a licking every other time, which probably many people don't understand. 67, at a place called Natula, we gave them a bloody nose. If you go into it was a 2 day skirmish. After that, for the next 20 years, they didn't speak. Look at 2017 when they wanted to intrude into Bhutan, we stopped them. Look at 2020 and to 2024, we stopped them cold at Galwan. It cost us casualties, it doesn't matter. But we stopped them cold and even if pushed them back by 9 to 10 kilometers. Hard military planners and professionals know what we have done. So we are not pushovers that anyone can arm twist our economy. Fine, we might not grow for a year or two, but we'll grow. Okay, now this is one way of looking at it. The second way of looking at it is, why is it that the EU is pressing us for a EFTA by December 20, December this year. They say ideally September, October, latest by December, they want FTA with us. Does the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni ring up our Prime Minister and say, let's get into a great deal? And please, hasten up the IMEC, the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor. It is important for them. Why does the why does the president of Philippines come and start a strategic partnership with India? Why does India send three warships to the South China Sea and does an exercise with the Philippines, which no other country has done, which China tails, keeps on monitoring? Why do you do it? Why has Prime Minister Modi gone to Japan? And Japan has said we will do $68 billion investment over a $34 billion investment which was planned before the visit. It's just doubled. These things have gone under the radar, right? So why is all this happening? It's easy to talk, on generic terms that India is a power which doesn't matter, this, that, but it matters to a lot of people who matter. Why is your own country, Australia, saying, look, we have a great FTA. We want to expand the scope of the FTA and increase the duration of the FTA. It's the latest. And we are happy to do all this. We are happy to do all this. We are not against anyone.
General, when I hear you speak, I am reminded by the fact that you're in a very competitive environment. You raised a point earlier about China being in decline. Economically, it's finished. Now, demographically, it does have problems, and of course, that will rub off on its economy over a period of time. But my question to you from a strategic perspective is this not a danger to India? I mean, you've just unpacked for us all the potential FTAs, all the potential, economic gains that India can have. But if your number one strategic and economic rival, China, is undergoing a fundamental internal collapse of which we can only see part of because it's an opaque society.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I
eventually,
agree.
eventually it may just do what you say. It'll just fall apart. One day we'll wake up and, people will be tearing themselves to pieces on the streets of Beijing. But if that were the case, does that not make China and the CCP in particular dangerous, more dangerous to India? Because from a historic perspective, when countries are on the down, they don't want to necessarily portray themselves as sinking into the morass. They would rather lash out and drag other people down with them. So would not India be a perfect target for such thinking in Beijing were that to eventuate?
Yeah, you're right. That's the normal thinking. But you have to understand what Beijing thinks. Is that a rational way of looking at life in Beijing? Is that the way, is that the way the Communist Party of China thinks? Please understand, the Communist Party of China doesn't want to give up power. War is a risk. If they go to war and they lose, they're permanently out of power. If you read the Communist Party of China, and if you read Deng Xiaoping, and these chefs are following Deng Xiaoping's model, Deng Xiaoping in way back in the 80s wrote that avoid war. Keep avoiding war by every 10 years. It's only by avoiding a war you'll become a superpower. And that's exactly what these chaps are doing. When all they say, oh, come to China, we don't go for war, yay, wo, all that, it is exactly that. If you go with the premise that a collapsing China will go and lash out and hit out against India, then you're not giving CCP the intelligence it deserves.
Oh no, hang on, hang on. Let's take a step back here because China is not the CCP. And from a historic perspective, when the center fails in China, and it has failed spectacularly in China,
Yes.
many tens of millions. We're not talking a few 100,000 people.
Y-
Tens of millions of Chinese people will slaughter themselves until the system reimposes itself, whether it be another dynasty or the Communist
We
Party
don't
or
know.
something else. We don't know. But the thing is that history is replete with examples of the system completely collapsing in China. So again, you can talk about the rationality of the CCP, but you can't be oblivious to the fact that there are situations where the center doesn't hold, and also political structures they don't last forever. I mean, when the going is good, they last for as long as the system permits them to last. But as we're seeing with the United States, they've had a good, what, 70 odd years? They've been running the world pretty much. And now things are looking a bit dodgy. Now, does that mean it's a precursor to an American collapse? We don't know for
No.
sure. But we do know that it's changing. And I think that one could say that even if the center in China starts to weaken, because it is an autocratic structure, it's brittle, as were the former dynasties that used to run China. They were brittle structures. They just needed a bit of a push, and the whole thing came down. And that's why I'm saying, when you're talking about China, first you've got to divorce China, the concept and construct of China and the Chinese people, from the CCP. Because then you can start seeing that, yes, whoever rules China may have it good for a period, but when things start going pear-shaped, there's no coming back from that. And then that's when stuff gets real very quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you. But then inwardly collapsing China poses a problem to the whole world. And
Oh,
we'll
sure.
tackle it
Oh,
when
yeah,
it comes.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not only India, we'll tackle it at that time.
Yeah.
It's a new paradigm altogether. We'll
Yeah.
tackle it at that point of time. But till then, we have to handle the current China
Mm.
the way it is,
Yeah.
and right, and we have to handle the current USA the way it is.
Mm.
In fact, for us, it is not either or. It's a
Mm.
case of neither or nor type. We are we're not in a great situation. I mean, I
Yeah.
agree with you. We are not in a great situation.
Mm.
I'm not saying India is on top of a shack and in the happiness and
Mm.
the
Mm.
sun is shining down on us. No, we are in a sweet
Mm.
spot economically. I agree, but
Mm.
equally we are faced with very tough alternatives.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
alternatives are not good, and alternatives are not good even if you go with either USA or China, right? And the alternatives without both of them are also not great. But that's the hand we are dealt with. I'll put it this way: it's not only our hand; that's the hand which most of us are dealt with in the world today. I mean, I mean, the way I look at it, I just think of countries like Japan or Australia, who are treaty bound, or South Korea, who are treaty partners to USA. How would you feel? You have left, given your security into his hands. You don't know whether he's going to come. He's going to be there that day when the day comes,
Well,
right?
we in Australia are actually surprisingly having discussions about what if, whereas as little as 5 years ago, talking about whether ANZUS would last a duration was like heresy. You would not see any public figure saying the Americans wouldn't charge over the Pacific to save Australia under any circumstance. Now you're starting to see, people who were in the senior former policy making space come out in public and say, well, I think we may have a problem here. and
Yeah.
and that is certainly a problem, and I think that you've illustrated that extremely well. But one thing that you have also illustrated, sir, if you don't mind me saying, is that it comes back down to the gray zone that we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
To be comfortable in that not being comfortable. I'm not comfortable with the fact that there's a great deal of uncertainty, but if uncertainty is what we're given, we don't have that many options. We have to feel comfortable with the uncertainty moving forward and trying the best we possibly can to navigate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
agree with you. In fact, actually, what you said earlier is quite profound. Every country has to operate in a gray zone.
Yeah.
It's a given. Now, at this point of time, the gray zone any sensible country has to operate has increased.
Mm.
And I think with the way things are, with the big powers and the global south, the way it is and everything, every country is trying to find comfort in that gray zone. In fact, they're trying to get the best out of the gray zone. Many people prefer to be in the gray zone because the gray zone gives them options,
Yes. Yeah.
right? The gray zone gives all of us options to do what we have to do in case the situation, goes bad.
Mm.
So I don't see most of the countries coming out of this in a hurry. This includes USA and China. They have created this gray zone for themselves, right? Both China and USA. And then now they find themselves stuck in that gray zone and they're not able. Look, this is another problem with the big countries. The big countries, when I say big countries, China and USA, don't have too much of options left to swing either way, except come to a conclusion with each other. Whereas middle powers like ours have the capability or have the options of doing what we want to do in the gray zone. China and USA don't have. They have to handle their own problems from their perspective. And their perspective seems to be only hardening. And that reduces their gray zone. And that reduces their maneuverability.
Oh, so sorry, General. What you're just saying is rather profound because, I'm reminded of an academic, I think based out in Singapore, Kishore Mambani, and he wrote about middle powers. And while I was listening to you speak, I was thinking to myself, if indeed his thesis is correct, and you've basically expounded on that, and that is that we are now in a world of multiple middle powers, we are in a multipolar world. We've never been in this world before. We've been in worlds where there've been, maybe a handful of powers at one stage, and that was pretty, pretty much in Europe and maybe one or two points in Asia. Then there was, the bipolar split during the Cold War, and then there was the unipolar moment. The idea of middle powers complicating the equations of the big powers is going to be an interesting one. But I think it comes with a set of dangers, and that is, when do middle powers overstep, or when do middle powers create their own forms of instabilities while navigating the gray zone that we're speaking of? I mean, we have no guide, we have no historic precedent in seeing such a great multitude of effective countries moving forward and cohabiting on this one planet before. So that is an interesting question,
Yeah,
General.
yeah, there is a problem. I mean,
Yeah,
you look
yeah.
at it, I mean, because this new construct doesn't have guardrails.
No, no, none.
Right? We are all
Yeah.
navigating a lot in the gray area. Whether
Yes.
you talk of the Middle Eastern powers like
Mm.
Saudis and Iran, there's a problem going on there.
Yeah.
West Asia, right?
Mm.
Or the European powers, or the South Asian powers, or the East Asian powers.
Mm.
We are all navigating in a zone of uncertainty.
Yeah.
We don't know where we're going to land. Then the next sensible thing is you reduce this uncertainty with the middle powers collaborating with each other. And that's happening. As we talk,
Mm.
what I said, India talking to Japan, India talking to Brazil, India talking to the Middle East,
Mm.
India talking to Europe. These are the Middle East, the middle powers are now started collaborating, and this is the new construct which is coming in and which is bound to stay. And the middle powers are not prepared to anymore get hemmed in between the two global powers. They're creating their own spaces. Why is the Middle East, why is the UAE and Saudi Arabia, they're talking to the US, they're talking to China, they're talking to India all together,
Yeah.
right? We've never had better equations with the Saudis than now. The India Middle East economic corridor till the Saudi end is going full steam ahead. I mean, and they are diversifying heavily into India. And the same thing I would say, dare say, Korea, Japan, and even Taiwan and Philippines are going to gravitate. I'm taking India as just an example because I'm familiar with what each country must be doing on its own, whatever it is doing on that. So there is this thing that middle powers are strengthening themselves. They're creating their own net. If one of the big powers fall, we should take the splash. We should be able to take the splash of the big powers falling. And there's no guarantee that a big power cannot, you know, fall. I mean, the two signal dangers. USA is the debt. If tomorrow they can't manage the debt, you're going to have a economic problem all over the world. In in China, it is their demographic and their power equation. If tomorrow, for some reason, there's unrest, which you outlined, there's going to be a big splash all over the world.
Yeah.
So these two can only be balanced out, or the safety net for that is the middle powers. And I think organically the middle powers are working that route. That's the good part of the whole story.
Yeah, still filled with uncertainty, but yes,
Yeah,
it probably is the best of the worst part. Okay, now, so I gotta bring us back to India a little bit
yeah,
more.
yeah,
Now, the first thing that I want to ask you is why did I mean, if the Indian government is so friendly with the Russians, why was the Su-57E not taken up? I mean, the Russians were literally giving the
yeah,
game
yeah,
away.
yeah. I agree with you. The first and foremost is we were in a partnership with the Su-15, 57 even before.
Yeah,
We were to do co-production with them,
correct.
research and development and everything,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Even before this whole story came up, and we pulled out of it because the terms and conditions didn't suit us.
Yeah,
Okay?
interesting. Yeah, okay, go. Yeah.
Yeah, look, we have to understand we are great with Russia, but that
Mm,
doesn't mean that we don't look to ourselves. The deals with Russia are still economic in nature and they come down to tough bargaining.
mm.
If the bargain is not good, we are not going to take.
Yeah.
And Russia is not our only option. We have options in France. We have options in elsewhere also. Others also make engines, and
Mhm.
others also make aircraft. So when the Russians first came for a joint production, joint design development, that partnership fell apart, and then got revived with the offer of F-35s, and we're not taken it.
Mm.
But notwithstanding that, they're still coming to down. It's not off the table completely. They're coming down to India to have a look at our facilities of MiG manufacturing. It's on. So it's not completely off the table. So as far as, the logical thing about aircraft, we are dealing with the Americans for the engines, for
Mm.
our AMCA. We are dealing with the French. We are dealing with the French for buying aircraft. We are dealing with the Russians. So we're dealing with everyone. No one is off the table. We are
Okay.
creating hedging options for ourselves. And for us, as far as India is concerned, if I look at it simplistically, and I'm talking now out of experience, even if two out of three succeed, we are on a pig's back. Even if one succeeds, we are okay. But what if three succeed? And ever since, there's this mistaken notion that we are over dependent on Russia. We are not. Over the past 15, 20 years, our dependence on Russia has reduced. Today, it's at about 30%. And ever since the Ukraine war has started, we have reduced our dependence even further because the space and all used to come from Russia.
Yeah, yeah.
Russia couldn't give it. Now we are on our own for the space. So we're making their own space,
Mm.
right? So that's over. So the dependence on Russia is not too much. We don't want to hereafter depend on anyone for advanced technology, whether it's Russia, France, Israel, UK, Japan, Korea, or Germany, or anyone. So we have a balanced way. We are of procurement of high tech. At the same time, we are developing our own. We might be late. For that I'll not comment on why we are late. Well, that's where we are. That's a situation. So we're going to do that.
From an Australian perspective, can you just walk us through how India manages different types of equipment. I mean, you
Yeah,
use the international marketplace to get what you need
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
get.
yeah,
But again, from our perspective, we look at interoperability of equipment
yeah.
within service, especially in a joint service environment. How does that all work for India? Because you've got multiple supply chains coming in from
Yes,
various places. So
yeah.
surely that complicates your defensive preparations, yeah?
It doesn't.
No?
No, it doesn't.
Mm,
That's something which people don't understand.
mm,
We insist on every equipment which is given to us to be operable with our standards. And we have a common standard on which we are functioning. And if we can plug and play into that common standard, every equipment talks to each other. There's no problem at all. It is how we procure things. And certain things, we insist, I mean, I won't say insist, we don't insist on a particular supplier to give up on his autonomy, source codes, and all that. But we do insist on that particular stream of procurement to be compatible with our system.
mm.
And our system, so if I get a Russian aircraft tomorrow and a French aircraft tomorrow and an American aircraft tomorrow, all three will be compatible to the Indian system. So they're interoperable as far as we are concerned. So that's not a problem at all. Look, I'm from the artillery. I
Mm.
indigenized artillery. I worked with, the Swedish guns. I've worked with Russian guns. I've worked with Israeli artillery. And now we've extensively indigenized our own systems. We've also worked with the American artillery. Uh, so I know what I'm talking of. So we make them work to our specifications. Our specifications plug into our system. As simple as that.
All right. Now, General, I hate to say this, but we're running out of time. I would be able to speak to you for the next 3 hours. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to invite you back on the show because I mean
Yeah,
this has been
sure,
a
I'll come.
fascinating conversation. Now, listen, one final question for you before we wrap up, and that is, what lessons should India draw from recent conflicts globally? Like Ukraine, Gaza, the Red Sea, when preparing for its own regional challenges, and which of these conflicts offers the most relevant lessons for India's planners?
Look, I think all conflicts have given us huge lessons, whether it's the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Israel-Iran conflict, Israel-Gaza conflict, our own experience in Op Sindoor, our own experience with the Chinese, right? Those also conflicts. They might not be shooting matches, but they taught us. I think every conflict has taught us. One of the things which I think the biggest lesson we've learned, at least I've learned personally, and I write about it and talk of it, the nature of war is changing drastically, right? It's changing drastically. And all of us have to be tuned to this. You examine each conflict, the nature of war in each of these conflicts is different. One. The second thing is conflicts are entering the gray zone much more than earlier, right? The conflicts are in gray zone, and gray zone conflicts are long lasting. So you have to be prepared to be in the gray zone, fight every country, fight through a long period where you would be operating for a long time in the gray zone, but you would have to be coming out into the black or the white zones periodically. The next thing is be prepared for the battle between unequals, where everyone talks of high-tech war, X, Y, Z, and space, and cyber, and AI. Equally, there are actors, and whether they're state actors, non-state actors, MNCs, who you were, who are fighting a very humanized battle at one level. And that hybrid scenario demands hybrid responses. So war is no more unitary in black and white, conventional, non-conventional. It is hybrid. And countries have to be prepared to fight the hybrid war. And this hybrid war, countries have to be prepared to fight for a long time on the borders. beyond borders and within borders. And we've experienced it at all three levels. So I think we have to change the way we have to think. All militaries have to think. And it demands something more. I mean, just to give you, take the case of Taliban. Taliban, completely non-technical force, poorly equipped, hardly equipped, could defeat USA, which is was the most advanced force. How do you explain that? So, how do you explain what Ukraine and Russia are doing to each other? Right? High tech, low on manpower, both. Right? So you have to be prepared to for both these things, and that's the way to go forward. And or for that matter, India, China, we've had four skirmishes without firing a bullet. That's a different form of warfare. So things are changing. And the only thing which is constant in all this is change.
Yes, that's true. That is very true. So, on that note, I thank you very much for sharing your insights on the focus. It was a fantastic conversation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I enjoyed talking to you, John, and
Thank you.
looking forward to our next session next time.
Absolutely, guaranteed. Today's conversation reminds us that India's security challenges are layered and complex. From Operation Sindoor to the hard realities of Galwan, from the long shadow cast by China across the Himalayas to the persistent evolving threat from Pakistan, what emerges is a picture of a nation that cannot afford complacency. India stands at a crossroads. It must prepare for the unexpected while shaping a future where deterrence and preparedness go hand in hand. And yet, as history shows us, strategy is never static. The question isn't just whether India can rise to these challenges, it's whether it can shape the terms of engagement in a region where the balance of power is always in motion. From Madras, India, that was Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, retired former Indian Army Director General of Artillery and host of the Gunner Shot YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me, John Bruni, for today's episode with Ravi Shankar. Check out the links in our show notes to learn more about General Shankar and connect with him on social media. Now, on to questions for the audience. Do you think Pakistan acts as China's cat's paw, or does it still pursue its own independent hostility towards India? Is India better prepared for conflict in the Himalayas today than it was during the Galwan clash of 2020? What lessons do you think India should take from Ukraine's war experience against Russia or Israel's against its foes? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a free way to support us. You can also subscribe to the podcast on the Ozcast Network, iTunes, and Spotify, where we'd appreciate your 5-star reviews. Do you have comments or questions about the podcast? Post them in the comment section on YouTube and I'll do my best to respond to as many as I can. My thanks as ever to the producer of The Focus, Neil Smart. Please stay connected with us on social media. Follow me on X at Bruni Doctor and follow The Focus on X at @thefocus_sage and on Blue Sky on the Focus pod adl.bsky.social. From Adelaide, South Australia, you've been listening to The Focus.